All right, let's get right into it. There is something happening in California right now. We're talking about a new kind of journalism, and it's not coming out of the big established newsrooms. Nope. It's bubbling up from the ground, led by a new wave of citizen watchdogs. And believe me, they are making a lot of noise. I mean, it's a huge question, right? When you have these massive taxpayer-funded programs that seem to be springing leaks everywhere, who's supposed to be watching? Who's going to be the one to sound the alarm? Well, the story we're unpacking today suggests a pretty interesting new answer is taking shape. And this is really the heart of the matter. You've got these independent reporters armed with little more than a camera and the grit to file public records requests, and according to the reporting we're looking at, they're uncovering what they allege is just staggering levels of fraud, potentially adding up to billions of dollars. So let's actually break this down. What does this new citizen journalism look like on the ground, in the real world? Now, before we get into the weeds, just a quick heads up on where this information is coming from. Everything we're talking about today is based on the investigative work from our sponsor, Shasta Unfiltered. They're doing some really interesting reporting up in the North State, and their work is the foundation for this whole explainer. Okay, so two major investigations have really thrown this trend into the national spotlight. You've got Nick Shirley, a YouTuber who's been digging into alleged fraud in healthcare and childcare. And then you have the veteran investigator James O'Keefe, who's targeting what his team calls vote-buying schemes. They have different targets and different methods for sure, but they're both painting a picture of regular citizens stepping up to fill a role they feel has been left empty. All right, let's dig into the first case. We're going to start with Nick Shirley's report, which absolutely exploded online. So Nick Shirley is just 23 years old, which really tells you something about this new generation of journalists. He had already made a name for himself exposing an alleged daycare scam in Minnesota. But then he turned his cameras on Los Angeles. And what he claims to have found there went viral almost overnight. Get this, in just one 40-minute video, Shirley claimed he uncovered over $170 million in fraud. Just let that sink in. And he alleges the real number could be in the billions. That is a mind-boggling figure to come from a single, independent investigation. So what did he actually find? Well, the allegations are pretty wild. His team documented so-called ghost daycares, basically empty buildings that were still billing the state. They reported finding fake hospice agencies that were using stolen Medicare numbers. And maybe most shocking of all, their investigation led them to a single LA address that had, count 'em, 89 different hospice agencies listed. And the video shows these often dilapidated offices with luxury cars, like Lamborghinis, parked right outside. So you might be asking, how could something like this even happen? Well, Shirley's report points to one thing: the money. The state's Medi-Cal budget has just ballooned, more than doubling in just a few years, from $108 billion in 2022 to a projected $222 billion by 2026. The argument here is that this explosion of cash created a perfect storm for fraud. So how did officials respond? Well, according to the reporting from Shasta Unfiltered, the initial reaction was not great. They say the governor's office basically just mocked the video. But that dismissal seems to have backfired because it just added fuel to the fire, helping the story get picked up on huge platforms like Joe Rogan's podcast. And this is where things get really serious. This isn't just some online debate. After the video blew up, Shirley reported that his personal information was leaked online and that he even received death threats. It got so bad, he had to hire private security. The stakes here are incredibly high. Now, believe it or not, at the exact same time all this was happening with Shirley's video, a completely different investigation was unfolding right on the streets of LA's Skid Row. This time, it was James O'Keefe and his team from the O'Keefe Media Group. They went undercover to investigate what they're calling a cash for ballots operation, and their focus was on some of the city's most vulnerable people. So what is a cash for ballots operation? Well, according to their investigation, it's a scheme where petition gatherers on Skid Row would allegedly offer things like cash or cigarettes to homeless people in exchange for signatures on ballot petitions, and in some cases for registering to vote. Here's how the scheme allegedly worked step by step. The hidden camera footage purports to show petitioners offering small inducements. We're talking $2 to $10, a cigarette, maybe some marijuana. They then ask these individuals to sign petitions for things like taxing billionaires. The most serious allegation is that some were even registered to vote using clearly fake addresses. One cited in the report was, I kid you not, Pinocchio Lane. And just like with Shirley's case, this one also turned confrontational. The reporting team says they were physically assaulted. They were allegedly pepper sprayed, punched, and then chased out of the area. They did file police reports, and the LAPD is reportedly looking into it.
O'Keefe's response was basically a challenge, a public ultimatum. He promised to release new videos from the sting operation every single day until arrests were made. It's a classic high-pressure tactic, using social media to force officials to act.
And it seems that pressure worked, because the combined power of these two separate viral investigations apparently forced multiple government agencies to respond, and to respond quickly.
Just look at this turnaround. The very same governor's office that reportedly mocked Shirley's video came out and called the Skid Row operation a felony that should be prosecuted. The LADA's office opened a review, the U.S. Attorney's Office promised to aggressively pursue any violations, and the California Secretary of State is now reviewing the material. It was a complete 180.
So it's really important to see that while these two cases are incredibly dramatic, the reporting presents them as part of a much bigger trend that's happening right now. Because it turns out Shirley and O'Keefe aren't alone. You have other independent reporters digging into voter registrations at vacant lots or looking into where the state's $24 billion spend on homelessness programs is actually going. Hashtags like #CaliforniaFraud are going viral, and all of this collective pressure is what's forcing these official statements and potentially leading to actual prosecutions. And really, that's what it all boils down to. It's the sheer power of social media. When these videos get millions of views, they create a tidal wave of public attention that becomes impossible for officials to ignore. It's a whole new playbook for accountability, one that's driven by shares, likes, and raw video footage. Which brings us right back to where we started. In a world where the media landscape is changing so fast, where does that responsibility for accountability really lie? Is this the future of how we keep power in check? And what does it mean for all of us when the people holding the cameras are no longer just reporting the story, but are actually becoming the story themselves?